slightly confused. Okay, thanks very much. So, as the introduction said, we're talking about public-private partnerships and Ukraine. We're looking at how they affect cyber resilience and the role that technology companies play, obviously, private companies. A big part of the conversation will be about the Tallinn mechanism and the future of initiatives like it. I'd like to get straight into it by asking each person to introduce themselves and their perspective on public-private partnerships, because we have a range of perspectives. I have a request, which is that when you explain public-private partnerships, your view on them, I'd like you to do like the Reddit subreddit, explain like I'm 5. So I want it explained super simply, if you could. So Tanel, after you.
Thanks so much. My name is Tanel Sepp. I'm an Estonian cyber ambassador. And public-private partnership, and in super simple terms, the war in Ukraine has shown the unprecedented role of private sector in a conflict. And the way how the public-private partnership has become tangible, actually. Before it used to be, at least for me, it used to be some kind of abstract abbreviation that we all talk about. But now I really see how private companies is providing services that are essential for fighting the war, keeping the connectivity, and really providing the services to people.
Casper.
It's difficult to come after Tanel. He was so short and specific, but I'll give it my best shot.
It was simple.
My name is Casper Klynge. I'm the vice president in a company called Zscaler, Cybersecurity and data protection company, and I did a bit of work for Microsoft in the past, and then I spent most of my career doing what Tanel is doing. I was a diplomat and had this strange job of being the ambassador to the tech industry back in the day, where we got to know each other. So I've been a bit on the public side as well. But I think the short version of why this public-private partnership is important is, and I speak with an enormous humility and respect for what is happening in Ukraine and the kind of challenges you guys are standing in front of. But I think when we look at today's world, a hybrid world, the one difference is that tackling these new challenges is really a team effort. And I think one of the differences is that in many ways the private sector will become or have become first responders in helping protect democracy, institutions, at the end of the day, society and individual people. So I think the short version, and I'll shut up, Sam, I promise, is that I think for companies, including the company I represent today, nobody can become Switzerland today. You have to take a stance, and I think what we will increasingly see is that companies will have to choose on what side of history they want to be on. And I think for most companies, it's a really easy choice when it comes to the situation in Ukraine. I think we have a moral obligation, but also a technological obligation to support you as much as we can.
Nina?
Hi everyone, my name is Nina Levchuk. I'm a co-founder and managing director of Impact Force. It's a Ukraine-based non-profit focusing on digital upskilling of civil society and SME, cybersecurity and mental health. When it's coming to private-public sector collaboration, what is specifically for me as a representative of civil society voice, it's an opportunity to be included in the dialogue, in the effective ecosystem, number one. Number two, it's an opportunity to get access to the resources that the civil society is needed the most. And it's an opportunity as well collaborate in an effective way and build transparent frameworks that could be scaled within the national level.
Hello, everyone. Valeriya, Deputy Minister, the Ministry of Digital Transformation of Ukraine. Last year at the Tallinn Digital Summit, I remember I had a very similar question, and then my answer was that we believe in the golden triangle, when government should work with the private sector and civil society, and then that's where the real, results appearing and real innovation could happen. We all know that a lot of innovation happens in the private sector, and when it comes to government right now, a lot of governments really have to reinvent themselves to be more efficient, more transparent, more agile, more fast, and they need innovation, they need digital transformation. And, that's exactly where public-private partnership could be very helpful. When it comes to Ukraine, of course, the support from private companies and partnerships with private companies, especially during the full-scale Russian invasion, have been very important and crucial to Ukraine over these past 3 years. But we have also a lot of great cases, for example, for digital services, for digital education, when together with private companies we have created something that has completely changes the way how government communicates with the citizens and completely changes the level of efficiency. Let's say our DA education platform is also supported by Google.org, and we are now working on creating an AI tutor, so we could offer Ukrainian citizens personalized learning trajectories and help them to reskill faster. And that is just one example, and we have more examples in digital services and digital products. So public-private partnership is crucial for governments.
Okay, so a very well-known example is the Tallinn mechanism. And I thought it'd be best if Tanel and Valeriya just again explain quite simply what it is, what it's for, how it works, that kind of thing.
Thank you. I think our minister in the morning also did quite a good job in explaining that the core mission of the Tallinn mechanism, which is looking at the requirements of Ukraine to really keep up with the resilience and to have the Ukrainian e-society working and the whole ecosystem working. We're combining the requirements from Ukraine with the donor opportunities. And we're actively also looking for some of the missing funds sometimes. We're looking at different capabilities that Ukraine needs. Ukraine itself has done a massive homework, really. So chapeau from my side for this, for really creating the intergovernmental working group, working out throughout different layers up to the Deputy Prime Minister Fedorov, the priority projects, and then presenting these on a platform that is specifically catered for this purpose. And then the donors look at this platform. It's called Catalog. What kind of projects we can take upon, and then work with the Ukrainians on how to implement these projects.
It's difficult to add something else. I think Tanel explained how it works, but from Ukrainian perspective, of course, Tallinn mechanism is really important because this is an instrument where Ukraine can get support for cybersecurity for civil infrastructure specifically. And we for the past months we really have done a lot of job inside the government. So we have created an intergovernmental group. We have conducted, with the help of our partners, a lot of assessments to better understand all of the needs from different state institutions on national and regional level in cybersecurity, preparing necessary profiles. And that was a pretty challenging work because, first of all, like you can imagine, if any government would have to face such a task, it would probably take a lot of time, and maybe it could take even more time than several months, because the information that in the end we could open, it should not be sensitive, right? So there is a lot of different challenges which we've overcome, but for the past several months we have really good progress. We are very, very grateful to all Tallinn mechanism members who support Ukraine with their expertise, with their services and products, and helping us to really implement projects which support cybersecurity in Ukraine.
Okay, so I was going to get onto the challenges, and I think this is interesting. You've obviously mentioned it from the Ukrainian government side, but it's a big project. There are always going to be challenges operating in a very difficult environment. I'd be interested to hear the other perspectives on this. Essentially, how it's going, what are the challenges, and how do you think they can be overcome? Free for all.
Okay. First, the biggest challenge for me is the scope of Tallinn mechanism. We do have also IT coalition that is focusing on kind of military structures, and that their requirements. But with telemechanism, we basically have the whole society minus defense. So there are really many different capabilities that you need to engage there. And the number of projects in the end will be, I guess, in hundreds or more.
Do we know how many, precisely?
Excuse me?
Do we know how many?
I think this is, sorry for interrupting you, this is something which is evolving. You don't have a fixed number. Exactly. That's also the challenge.
The second big challenge for me is that we are right now kind of trying to assist Ukraine to maintain the resilience, but also we're looking into the future. Because I'm not a Trump. I cannot say that the war will end in 24 hours. I wish it would, but I would bet that even if the kinetic war ends, the cyber attacks will continue. So the resilience parts will remain extremely crucial. So we're really looking at the telemechanism in a longer term. And obviously, the third big challenge for me is how to keep it a fair game. We have the industry that is engaged a lot here, and of course, industry has its own interests. Our interest is really to make sure that Ukraine prevails, and then also to make sure that we can also assist also Ukrainian industry. So how to make this mechanism work?
That sounds like a
no, perhaps just adding a few points to what Tanel said. I think just stating the obvious. Of course, this is an arms race. Those who want to do bad things in Ukraine are innovating as well, and they're using state-of-the-art technology. We might talk a bit about artificial intelligence, both as a mean of protecting yourself, but also as a mean of scaling attacks. I think that's going to be an increasing challenge over the next couple of months and years. So therefore, we do need to make sure that we can provide the technology that is up to speed. And this is where I think the talent mechanism provides a very helpful facility that enables also companies to look at what kind of projects or specific requirements the Ukrainian government or civil society has, and then being able to provide those technologies. But I think there's another important aspect in this, and that is with, again, enormous respect for the situation in Ukraine, which of course cannot be compared to anything else. But those countries that are providing support to Ukraine right now are also seeing an increased number of cybersecurity attacks. I mean, if we look at my own company's threat intelligence, I mean, some of these numbers are absolutely staggering. If we look at ransomware last year, there was, in one area that of course has a direct implication because of the war in Ukraine, energy, we saw a 527% increase year on year in the number of ransomware attacks against the energy sector. So I think we need to innovate to help Ukraine, but we also need to innovate to protect those countries that are, I think are doing the right things and supporting Ukraine today.
Just to add on to what was said and bring a bit from the different angle. So talent mechanism, if you Google it, right, is defined as a coordinated efforts of donors to get the necessary civilian cybersecurity assistance to Ukraine in more efficient, agile, and streamlined way, right? So when it's coming to the civil level, civil perspectives, the biggest three challenges that civil society is facing, number one, it's inclusivity, number two, it's a trust, and number three, it's funding. No surprise, I think it's everyone very well known. When you're taking the first one, be including, be a voice, to really build the bridge between the gap of what does civil society need when it's coming to cybersecurity protection, to the level basically how this voice is represented on the national government and big tech level, how it's included and how then resources distributed. That's, I think, still there very big scope and opportunity to work on that, and we all need to work together to improve that. If you go even deeper, right, to back up what was said from the civilian perspectives, and look at the level of individuals, in the level of SME, and then in the level of national level. It's very well known fact that Ukraine like experiencing the biggest cyber war, right now in the world, one of the biggest cyber war in the world. And if you're coming to the individual level, you understand, so when it's coming to the cyber attacks, right, those attacks are very simple. They are not super sophisticated. It's like phishing, it's as well cyberbullying, it's a cybercrime, and so on. So I'm not sure if you know about that, but for instance, in 2023, United Nations Women have launched very interesting report on basically assessing a level of cybercrime in the Central Europe and Central Asia. And they define Ukraine as basically one of the countries that is leading when it's coming to the cybercrime. And cybercrime here is defined in a couple ways. It's including cyberbullying, cyber violence. It's like, for instance, sexual harassment through social media and so on. But it is well just a simple attack through the emails, through the phishing emails, and so on. So the first level, how can we really address and support civilians on individual level through the education? And that's what is, I believe, Ukrainian government doing a lot on that, on bringing digital literacy. And this is where I see a lot of private-public sector collaboration, including through the talent mechanisms. The next level is SME, the most complex, not only in Ukraine, but as well across European Union. Like SME from one side, they obviously, as a business owner, they experience the same challenges as the individuals, but as well, additionally, the supply chain network problem is a rise. And this is one of the global problem right now. It was evaluated by Harvard with 8.8 trillion millions right now. What does it mean? It's basically infrastructure connection, right, between the SME and other companies, third-party connection in the network. And SME are not protected, right? They don't have resources enough to really build cybersecurity at the level how the corporates, and they required a lot way more resources, time, and people in the end of the day. So when it's coming to Ukraine, it's becoming even more challenging to make it happen. So I think it's a huge challenge here, and it's a huge call as well for government and for the big tech to support this layer. And I guess on the third national level, I will pass to Valeriya.
Thank you. So coming back to the question about the challenges of talent mechanism, I'll try to be very brief. If you would be a government, would you open all your cybersecurity needs and projects to the private sector? Mm-hmm. And how would you do it? Would you do it? How would you do it? And I think that's the biggest challenge, because we need to work with the private sector. We need the support from the private sector. But at the same time, we are a country at war. And I think this is the challenge which we are now, trying to solve with all talent mechanism members. And I believe we have some of the ideas which are not yet there, but we are in the process of a discussion. And I have a very big hopes that we will find the right way to do that. But that's basically the biggest challenge when it comes to the talent mechanism. All other challenges, they are very small compared to that, because we already found a solution, like how to basically collect, analyze, validate, prioritize the needs, right? Because prioritization of the needs on cybersecurity for the government, it's also a big question. You can't support all of the state institutions at once. Mm-hmm. You would need to prioritize. And, for one, it may seem obvious, but sometimes when you look at the urgent needs and then you look at the long-term perspective, and there might be some conflict in there as well. So I would say that these are the biggest challenges from my perspective.
So you mentioned that had a similar conversation this time last year, and the talent mechanism is about to have its first birthday, I think. So I guess the question is, what's the future of the talent mechanism? And if we met back here in another year, what would you like to have happened? How could it be improved? What are the concrete steps that need to be taken to overcome these challenges we just talked about?
Can I do a small test here? And sorry to interfere with your moderating role. Can I ask the audience here, how many of you know about the talent mechanism? Can you just raise your hands?
Is that because we didn't talk about it for 2 minutes?
I would have been disappointed if the number was smaller. And then, of course, those who didn't raise their hands because they're looking at their phones and doing something else, they're actually listening here, which is fair enough. I think I don't think this represents sort of objectively how the outside world knows about the talent mechanism. I think even in the private sector, there is too little awareness of the talent mechanism. So I think one of the things that we need to do collectively is get people to know more about the opportunities here. The other one, and I think Tanel is going to agree with me on that, is speed matters. Every day in Ukraine there is another attack, and it has an existential dimension to us. We have to make sure that we help governments, including from the private sector side, speed up the process so that we can do this speed dating between technology, state-of-the-art technology, and the requirements of Ukraine right now. And that is not a long-term game. That is something that needs to happen much faster than it's doing right now.
Just one question there. You mentioned raising awareness and sort of, I guess, implied that that's something that the private sector needs to do. Mm-hmm. What do you see as why is the private sector interested in partaking in this, other than getting contracts to do work? Like, what's its motivation?
Because I think, and unfortunately, now I'm getting into trouble. I represent a company that is not well known either. I don't know whether it's the same level as the Thailand mechanism, but even pronouncing Zscaler is something of a challenge for people. But I think for a company like us, finding out what is it that Ukraine needs and how can we actually provide that technology is actually complicated. And if we have literally thousands of companies coming in your direction, even coping with that is going to provide another challenge. So I think this is just, such an obvious way of coordinating requirements with, technology available. And I think that's helpful for the private sector and hopefully also very helpful for Ukraine and also helpful for the governments that are providing funding there.
Can I add to that as well? So let's please not forget that that's actually the first cyber war. Exactly. And for a lot of private companies working with Ukraine is right now, a possibility to get better understanding on what's happening. That's a possibility to receive those lessons learned. That's a possibility to be future ready and prepared and understand what could happen next. So this is, of course, about supporting Ukraine and helping us to fight the aggressor, to build the bright digital future for us all, and to bring freedom and democracy to the whole world. But it's also a possibility to be future ready and to really get that understanding.
Can I add on this? And first I'm saying that I guess half of the hands that went up were from my team. But
good to meet all of you from Tanel's team.
2 points that I really want to make here. One is that because it is the first cyber war, then I would say that there is a trend that we have this kind of sectoral assistance programs. We have the artillery coalition, we have the drone coalition. So it's actually extremely logical then to have some kind of cyber coalition. And I think that it is going to be a trend that also in the future, in different conflicts, this is the way how assistance will be given. Because there are just so many different fields. It's not just that you send by ship many troops to somewhere and then it's done deal. No, the war has become more complex. And second, besides getting better understanding what it actually means, this kind of assistance mechanism, in a year's time, I really want to get also the PPP part, the public-private partnership, to have some really good examples of how it actually works. So this is my goal for the next year.
I think from civil society perspective, for us, it's important strategization and as well regulation. So out of whatever cases will be created, opportunity to scale it, right? Obviously, I completely agree that what we're experiencing in Ukraine, that would be a cases that other nationality would be able to learn. We all understand that this is not the last cyber war. Overall, the cyber attacks is a process. It's not like event that, like with a missile, physical missiles happening one, right? It's like ongoing process. It's happening in one or another iteration. It could escalate, it could escalate. The key things, it continues. And so if it continues, the overall, not just like Ukraine, but all civil society need to learn how to increase the digital literacy and be prepared for that. And unfortunately, right, Ukraine will bring a lot of cases Unfortunately, because we're going through that, right? But fortunately for the rest of the world, this would be the cases. And those cases would require standardization. It will require as well regulations, so from legal frameworks perspectives. Tolling mechanism obviously give a framework, but there is way more work behind this framework. And that's where, again, the role of the government and collaboration with civil society is critical.
So we've spoken a lot about cyber war. This is the first cyber war. Poland recently has, I think it's about to have the presidency of the EU, so it's starting to kind of push some of its priorities. It's said that it thinks it's also a cyber war. I think that's not to take away from what's happening in Ukraine, but that's how it sees it. It's been bombarded, as you mentioned, attacks are going up. I think, so there are lessons to be learned from how this is working in Ukraine. What are those lessons? As you say, it's just going to continue in Ukraine or elsewhere. Poland thinks it's already happening there and in the rest of Europe. What can other countries learn? What are the lessons?
I mean, I can say a couple of words to begin with. I mean, I think, again, from a company point of view, and it's not black or white, so I'm going to generalize a little bit, but I think in many ways, you know, the Deputy Minister spoke about sort of innovation and state-of-the-art technology and getting that in to help defend Ukraine. I think the same applies on the attacking side, that they are also utilizing the latest technology, and you could almost say that, you know, Ukraine is becoming sort of the canary in the coal mine in the sense that this is where new equipment is being tested, both in the physical world but also in the virtual world. So what we are seeing happening in Ukraine is now spilling over to other countries. I mentioned this as well, Sam, that I think when you look at Western Europe, the US, other countries supporting Ukraine, they are now seeing more sophisticated attacks. They're seeing higher volumes of attacks. They're seeing different sectors in industries being attacked. And unfortunately, again, just using our own data sets, no industry is left alone. I mean, not a single one. I mean, it's civil society, it's healthcare authorities, it's energy, it's manufacturing. So, you know, having worked with a lot of different companies, including in my home country of Denmark, there are many companies who used to say, well, you know, we produce something very specific. We're not the target of any cybersecurity attacks. I think also with new technology being brought in, that's not a statement you can actually rely on anymore. You have to up your game. You have to make sure that you also utilize the latest technology to defend yourself. Because at the end of the day, you know, I was ambassador to Indonesia back in the day in 2017 when NotPetya hit one of our big shipping companies. And I can still remember how that company's infrastructure was wiped out literally overnight and how dramatic and existential it was. So again, not taking away anything from what is happening in Ukraine, but I think for any company, for any country, this is unfortunately a warfare that you need to prepare yourself for and spend resources in helping mitigate.
I wonder what the perspective from Ukraine is.
I think maybe that would be obvious, but I would still mention it, that first of all, cybersecurity is not something fixed or set up. Cybersecurity is a process. And especially right now when a lot of technologies are evolving, the world of technology is evolving, and there are a lot of new challenges every day, you always have to innovate and innovate fast and improve. So you can't take some learning which you have for granted. You learn all the time and all the way, and that's why the cooperation is very important to share this knowledge. Secondly, I would say that, of course, the capacity building and digital culture is also very important, and that is something that you cannot build in one day. So capacity building, it's specifically, of course, for government, for civil servants, which have to be prepared and know about the risks and have a high level of digital literacy and cyber hygiene, but the same with the society, with citizens. They need to have a high level of digital literacy, because if we would look, for example, at the statistics for phishing and so on, so, even in European countries. So we still, I would say, have a lot of things to improve there. Thirdly, which is very important, when it comes to Ukraine, when the invasion started, we basically already had the digital infrastructure and our ecosystem, our D ecosystem, which delivers digital services, education, services for businesses, etc., etc. And that helped us a lot to react fast on the needs and demands that we've seen on the market and inside the country. So it helped us to quickly launch different services. And because we already had a good process set up in our state institutions, and we have several institutions who are working on a constant basis on the cybersecurity. But also this quick reaction on what is needed, how to develop it, how to launch it, how to make it secure, that's important. If something happens, if the invasion happened in one day, you can't set up this in one day. You have to be prepared. And I think this is a very important thing. You don't need to plan it, to think that you would do it in the next year, in the next 2 years.
Yeah.
You need to do it right now.
I think for civil society, or for me personally, one of the biggest learning, if we go back exactly 1,001 days ago, right, when the war, the full-scale invasion, the war started definitely in 2014, way earlier, right? The full-scale invasion happened. The key learning was that the biggest organization, the private sector, wasn't ready actually to respond to it in the most effective way. And the civil society was the one who actually take a lot of strengths on themselves and were providing first emergent humanitarian and not only respond. The same when it's coming to the civil attacks or civil threats, what we're experiencing right now, we see that civil society very often are the first who actually get attacked and be involved in this process, right? And often we as well see is that many organizations are failing to address it. So out of this learning, I think the three things what we kind of need to make sure we are doing. And Valeriya, I think, already mentioned very critical of them. So for us, it's first of all empowering those communities, right? Building local capacity to respond and recover from cyber. So it's not about being digitally ready, right? So increasing digital literacy, but as well asking themselves, what if it's happened? How we recover? Very, very short case that I wanted to give you as an example. We have incredible, together with Ministry of Digital Transformation, we have incredible incubation for women where we are teaching them how to build secure business online. There is a mother from the Lviv who is doing craft food, craft things basically with her hands. And recently her data of her clients was compromised. When it was compromised, right, unfortunately, she wasn't losing just her business. She actually was losing her ability to sustain financially. So her ability with livelihood, right? And when you're looking at this landscape, when you're looking at this scope, not on the biggest organization level, again, what I already mentioned, who able to purchase and save, it's a question of economical empowerment of civil society itself. So cybersecurity directly connected to economy, and therefore we need to find the mechanism, what if it's happened, what is next? And currently we're talking a lot about how to protect from. So I want us to start talk about what is after. The second one, of course, effective collaboration where our voice is heard. And the last one would be transparent access to the finances as well, right? So it is very complex because of the whole situation, and there is a lot of support for civil society, yet it will require even more when you think about the recovery perspectives. Thanks.
Just a small remark. It's also about the digital maturity of small and medium enterprises. So it's about digital literacy of citizens, but it's also about digital maturity of small and medium enterprises. And, this is not something theoretical. Exactly. This is something which should be your one-pager. If you're an entrepreneur, you need to understand what's that, what it covers. Like, for example, what types of systems, what's the level of digital literacy of your employees, cybersecurity, how do you use cloud, or how do you use AI, why it is needed, do you really need an AI, and so on. Yes, so basically, this is a very important part as well. So society could also be ready for any type of crisis which might come, and that's not necessarily invasion, pandemic, catastrophes because of the climate change, etc., etc.
So on that point, we've been talking about, we only have 3 minutes left, we've been talking about lessons learned and preparedness. This is something that came up, and digital resilience in government and that kind of thing. There are lessons to be taken from what's happening in Ukraine and the experience of the Tallinn mechanism. How likely is it, realistically, that they will be heeded by other governments? And how can we make them listen?
If I start, I mean, in more general terms, for me, that the question is about our lifestyle, our kind of e-society, e-lifestyle, digital lifestyle, that us, Ukraine, Denmark also, we're living that already. So it's kind of the same principle question of how do we choose how we want to live? And we should not let anybody to take that away from us. This choice is ours. So this is really kind of this extremely principled question for me that goes back actually to why Ukraine is fighting right now.
Yeah, I mean, 30 seconds. I think, if it didn't exist, we would have to invent it, literally, because I think it is the right mechanism for providing support for Ukraine. If I may just make a slightly different point, and then I'll shut up. I think we're standing in front of course, a difficult situation, both for Ukraine, but also politically, geopolitically, a lot of changes. I mean, my own conclusion when you look at this landscape, being a former diplomat, is that I think in many ways, we need to expect from the private sector that they will be the custodians of the transatlantic relationship in all its formats and in all its different avenues. And what I mean by that is that I think, no matter what happens in Brussels or in Washington, D.C., we are incredibly dependent on making sure that we have the same approach, that we support the same institutions, the same values, etc. And I think the Tallinn mechanism and the support also from the private sector to Ukraine is a very concrete example of how that custodianship of the transatlantic relationship needs to evolve. And I think the private sector needs to step up to the plate to do that.
Go next.
I would say that a lot of governments already start to learn from Ukraine, and a lot of organizations as well. And we are very open also to share our lessons learned in some particular topics, and there are lots of mechanisms for that. But you also asked a question about what is the future of Tallinn mechanism, which was left unanswered. And I would like to say that for me, I believe that Tallinn mechanism is a very efficient coalition, which will show even more results in the next year, I believe. And it could be really an example for all other coalitions, like Tanel, for example, mentioned already, for future coalitions. Because with the all guidelines, operational process set up, good communication between the government and then the private sector, etc., etc., it could be just taken and replicated. So you don't need to waste time, and you could bring everyone together, and it could be like really urgent response as well, because all the processes will be already set.
Very short. For us, it's a desire of international civil society or representative non-profit to learn from Ukraine. What we see right now, there is a lot of desire to come to Ukraine and bring European expertise and start to collaborate with Ukrainian government. But let's not forget that we are the one who is in front line. So what I would love to see more from international civil society is more proposals how we could collaborate together, not fight towards financial grants and so on, but as a find efficient way of getting access, to those mechanisms, and then spread it to the world.
Okay, I think that's our time. So thank you very much. It's very interesting. If you could thank the panelists.